In the previous episode, Gregory was on the verge of death, nearly executed by Kakayashi, when Ranga and Gobta arrived at the last second, saving him just as the killing blow was about to fall. Meanwhile, Ultima continued her fierce battle against Suiemu as chaos consumed the battlefield. Just as the fighting reached its breaking point, reinforcements arrived and despair turned into hope, only for everything to freeze in an instant when Luminous sensed the impossible. Twilight Valentine was alive. Now, let's continue the story and jump straight into Chapter 2, Part 2. Twilight reveals himself as still alive, calmly mocking Luminous and explaining that backing up his core and memories was something he had planned from the start, refusing to allow his own creation to ever truly surpass him. Though disgusted, Luminous immediately realizes how dangerous the divine ancestor truly is, and begins calculating her options as Twilight casually announces that he has recovered and grown stronger, manifesting the Origin Blood Spear once wielded by Jahil. She realizes it instantly. Twilight had long synced his memories with the Origin Blood, letting him possess Jahil at any time, and even after being reduced to pure information and embedded in Velzard as an authority, he left a failsafe behind. Though he lost true immortality, his ultimate skill Angra Mainyu remains, and his power now rivals a pseudo-dragon. With questions racing through her mind about his intentions, Luminous attacks without hesitation, unleashing Hinata's Melt Slash through her own mastered Overblade, only for Twilight to casually block it and chastise her like a disobedient child. One exchange is enough to make the gap in strength unmistakably clear. This is no weakened revival, and a direct battle is unwinnable. Her previous victory had relied entirely on traps and ambush, not raw power. Yet, despite the hopelessness, Luminous remains eerily calm, trusting that Chloe would have warned her if true death awaited, even as she bitterly mutters Chloe's name and desperately searches for even the smallest opening to survive what should have been an impossible encounter. Sensing that something had gone terribly wrong with Luminous, Benimaru immediately seized command of the battlefield, ordering the wounded to evacuate and warning everyone to abandon any hope of quick recovery, knowing that if resurrection magic failed, casualties would spiral out of control. He made it clear there would be no reckless heroics. Survival depended on retreating, regrouping, and only fighting at full strength. Even though the enemy's power was suppressed to less than 1/10 inside the holy field, that advantage would vanish the moment they escaped, rendering the original strategy nearly pointless. Meanwhile, Milim and Chloe charged into the Tenshukaku's Great Hall to face Iberage, now manifested as Lucia, sealing the battle away to prevent catastrophic damage. With Milim engaged, Benimaru calmly declared that only lesser enemies remained, took command of the Eastern Holy Field, and assigned the others to eliminate stragglers. Hinata and her forces had already crushed most high-ranking enemies, and those still standing showed no signs of escaping. When Hinata questioned Benimaru's confidence, he revealed the reason with absolute certainty. Rimuru had returned. Understanding immediately, Hinata smiled, and Masayuki felt instant relief. Convinced victory was assured, though a lingering unease remained as he recalled seeing a grown version of a child linked to Lucia, someone who might have been his own sister, or even his past self. Velgren calmly dismissed the concern, assuring everyone that Milim would be fine, and added that Testarossa and the others had arrived just in time. As she spoke, reinforcements poured in from the formerly frozen Eurasian forces, Carrera, Carrion, Frey, Midre, and Obera joining the battlefield, while Mizari and Rain linked up with Moss, Suka, Gabel, and Geld, and before anyone even noticed, Sue's true body had already taken position beside Benimaru. Reporting the results of his operations, Sue explained that, although their numbers had thinned, targeting and eliminating the enemy commanders had shattered the cryptid's cohesion, turning what was once a chaotic threat into a scattered mob that could be wiped out piece by piece. With the cryptids lacking any real concept of cooperation unless led by rare intelligent leaders, their defeat meant victory was now largely a matter of cleanup. Still, unease lingered around Ivaraj, whose recent changes made its true strength impossible to gauge, raising fears that it might have evolved into something even more dangerous. Acknowledging that Ivaraj was beyond their ability to interfere with directly, Benimaru resolved that their immediate goal was survival, holding the line until Rimuru arrived. Yet one concern gnawed at him. Luminous, who should have been commanding from the sky, was instead locked in battle with an unknown man in a red suit whose presence radiated something deeply unnatural, prompting Benimaru to watch carefully while preparing to send support the moment it became necessary. Luminous fought with everything she had, but Twilight completely outclassed her, smashing her into the ground and advancing as if her defeat was already inevitable. Even as she briefly acknowledged that Benimaru had perfectly handled the wider battlefield, she knew none of it mattered anymore. This was where death truly waited. Twilight coldly called her his greatest masterpiece and demanded she return his power. Forced to gamble everything, Luminous unleashed her ultimate trump card, the demonic blood curse bullet, a blood-based curse that fused physical and spiritual force and bypassed anti-skill defenses. but every shot was effortlessly nullified. She then baited Twilight into a hidden trap and activated Spirit Disintegration, a sacred seal meant to erase both body and soul, only to realize too late that the Origin Blood Spear was missing. Twilight appeared behind her, laughing as he revealed the horrifying truth. His soul was stored inside the spear itself, making destruction of his body meaningless. By devouring a fallen cryptid, he regenerated instantly, proving that as long as the spear existed, he was truly immortal. As he crushed her throat and drained her life force, Twilight sealed the area with a high-tier isolation barrier that only a handful of beings in existence could deploy, ensuring no rescue was possible. Mocking her for falling short of his expectations, he dismissed her as a failed masterpiece. And in that moment, as doubt consumed her, Luminous finally realized the brutal truth. Despite her immense power, overwhelming knowledge, and monstrous existence value, facing the divine ancestor wielding the Origin Blood was a battle she may never have been able to win from the very beginning. Luminous finally realizes that being called Twilight's greatest masterpiece was never about strength alone, but about something deeply wrong at her very core. The fantasy library she accessed from birth shouldn't have been perceivable at all. It wasn't native to this world, yet functioned under the language of the world itself, exposing a fatal contradiction tied to her existence. In that instant, she understands that when Twilight demanded his power be returned, he wasn't seeking strength or revenge, he needed something intrinsic to her. As pain racked her body, Luminous recalled the moment her existence began. How Twilight had bestowed upon her the name Luminous Valentine, giving her his own sacred name granted by Veldanova, imprinting it into her core before she even possessed a self. She remembered being nothing more than a shining sphere of light suspended in culture fluid, a vessel designed to imitate a soul, nameless and formless until that moment. That act of naming became her first memory, the defining imprint that shaped her growth and evolution. And then it clicked. Twilight hadn't simply created a powerful being. He had entrusted something far greater to her during his final experiment, something bound to the very foundations of the world itself. At that moment, Luminous finally understood why she alone was called his greatest masterpiece, and why Twilight now needed her to die. Luminous forcibly broke free from Twilight's grip with a precise joint lock, rising once more with the Night Rose sword in hand, her resolve unshaken despite the absolute gap between them. Twilight mocked her refusal to submit, but she calmly declared that this very stubbornness, her refusal to bow even when defeat was certain, was her true worth. She attacked again, pouring spiritual energy into her blade, only to be effortlessly blocked and crushed by Twilight's counter, leaving her broken on the ground once more. And yet, she still refused to surrender. Twilight scoffed, asking why she continued when defeat was inevitable. Luminous fired the question back at him, why he ever called her his masterpiece, because her unyielding defiance, even in the face of certain death, was something he would never comprehend. Even from the ground, Luminous struck and mocked his pride as a creator, pushing an irritated Twilight to finally decide to end her, convinced that taking her power would fix everything. Her confidence came from absolute trust in Chloe. If death truly awaited her, Chloe would have already rewound time to warn her, even through Twilight's barrier. Accepting there was no rescue, Luminous unleashed her final trump card, Rosa Espatada, sacrificing the Night Rose sword to shatter Twilight's barrier and release its sealed power. The shattered blade became rose petals, carrying the concept of death through her ultimate skill, Asmodeus, draining life and poisoning everything they touched. Twilight mocked the attack and walked through it, only to collapse, coughing blood, realizing too late he'd misjudged it. Luminous knew she couldn't kill him, taking less than 10% of his power, but the wound and humiliation were enough. Even knowing defeat was inevitable, and Chloe hadn't intervened, she resolved to fight on until the very end, watching for any remaining chance.